Hello and welcome to the Pandaverse. I'm Elgon and I'm here with Christine Gabriel. And
Guys,
today we have Nola Nash. We also have Jule Selbo lingering in the background. So welcome everybody. Nola's got a new book launching on Wednesday.
CRESCENT City Sin. Here it is with our fabulous cover. Look at that. Don Kramer's amazing work. Love it. So excited about that cover.
CRESCENT City Sin. It's book 2 and in the CRESCENT City series.
All right. We're going to start with chapter 1, which is all of one paragraph long. Chapter 1. Things put underground in New Orleans don't often stay there. Even the darkest of buried things are pushed back up and into the light eventually. Nothing is truly immune to the pull of the surface, even things that should be, like bodies and secrets. Darkness can, if only briefly, hide a multitude of sins. Chapter 2. Words floated like snowflakes through the mist of her mind, darting and dancing in the wind, familiar yet foreign. She tried to grab onto one, to hold the word long enough to see what it was, the detail, the beauty. Reaching for it only pushed it farther away. She didn't know what the words were or what they meant, but she knew she needed them more than anything else. Words so soft, earnest, and pure. Panic began to seize her as the words drifted away. She wanted to run, to chase them into the mist and snatch them from the swirling air. Her feet refused, rooted her to the spot where she stood. At least, she thought she stood. Was she standing? There was only mist and white and words, the words that were everything. Zaylee? The mist asked. She blinked hard at it. Had she heard her name? Surely not. Zaylee, can you hear me? Nod. Recognition, but not understanding. Good, the mist said. Haze gathered, silvery and bright. Transparent became opaque. Opaque became solid. Beauty from nothing. The mist smiled at her, gentle and familiar like family, strong but serene. A hand was extended, a hand was taken, warm despite the icy whiteness. I don't understand, Zaylee whispered. Her voice lost itself in the mist and the words still floating out of reach, soft, persistent. Shaking her head, the mist said, no, and I can't explain, not yet, not now. Another hand was extended, another hand was taken, warm. Why? Zaylee asked. The question hung thickly. Silver mist sighed, a whisper in a snow-coated forest. It's not time. When? The question begged an answer, but was disappointed. Words pulsed in the mist, fervent, impassioned, pleading. Solid silver mist began to melt, wavering, unsure. Silver became gold. Cold became warmth, glowing, flickering, fading. Camille? Zaylee asked. Golden mist nodded, smiled. A tear fell, silver shimmering. Hands were released. Whiteness faded to gray. Blackness settled. Je n'étais pas fini. You aren't finished, a thinning mist said. Golden flickering in the blackness. A bell, soft, tinkling, and muffled. Words ceased, quiet. Only the bell. Heaviness, tightness, heat. Smells, wood, wax, and dust. The bell, voices panicked, pain blinded, darkness enveloped, darkness hid.
Dang, girl, dang. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's got to be like the shortest chapter 1 that I've ever seen in a book. But it works really well because it bridges book 1 to book 2 very well.
Yeah.
And there's no spoiler alert. We kind of figured that Zaylee was going to make it back
Zaylee
somehow.
had to come back. Yes, and for the dedication actually gives this one away, kind of lets you know what's going to happen if you are paying attention to it, because the dedication comes from Edgar Allan Poe's The Pit and the Pendulum, and it is, even in the grave, all is not lost, which kind of lets you know where you are and what you're about to see. So
Yeah, well, anybody that has a problem with that, we are dealing with paranormal, supernatural, magic, voodoo, and all sorts of things that you loved from book one are amplified in book two. I think it's actually, as good as book one was, I think it's actually a better book.
I would agree with that. Absolutely. It is very well written.
Thank you. It was interesting for me to write this one, and it was hard to get started because I had not written book one as a series. When I originally wrote it, it was not a series. It was a standalone book. And for me, it had ended. And so to have somewhere else for these characters to go was almost, it almost seemed like sacrilege at first. It was like, but they've done their big thing. Where else can I take them? And it took me a while because I said, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to write this sequel, it has got to be good because I loved these people. I loved every one of the characters so much that if I was going to take them somewhere else, it had to be at least what the first book was. I was not going to sacrifice their characters to something that was not good enough for them. So it took me a little while to wrap my head around what I wanted to do with this book and what was going to be good enough for these characters and their story. And I stopped and started a few times because of that. It was kind of like, nope, this isn't it. This isn't it. And it had to feel right. And it had to I just really had to wait until it came to me. I always say that this series in particular doesn't come to me, it comes through me. And so I kind of had to wait on the story to come. Anytime I forced it, it wasn't good enough. It had to come on its own. And so it eventually did. And when it came, it was like, yes, all right, now we've got a story, guys. Let's tell your story. Because it really did feel like they were telling me the story, not me telling their story. It always felt like that with these characters.
So all your fans have Zara Kramer to thank for that because she made it a condition of signing you that you would write a sequel to this.
She absolutely did.
Turn it into a series, actually.
Yeah, and when she did that, it was funny the way that she positioned it because she said, so we want to sign you, but we have some conditions, and I don't know if there'll be a deal breaker or not. And I'm sitting here thinking, there is nothing this woman can say on the other side of this phone that is going to be a deal breaker, but let's hear her out. I'm sorry, I've got a publisher wanting to sign me. We're not negotiating here. And when she said that, it was like, I can do that. And I'm going, can I do that? But, it's like, okay. I mean, I liked them so much. I love the characters in the story so much. I was kind of like Vera for this when I said, yeah, I don't mind spending more time with these people. I love them. It's just, can I actually give them the story they deserve? And so I hope that I have done that.
You have. You absolutely have. Well done.
Thank you. I like the new character that has made his way into this book, and some of the side characters or supporting characters that come in that he's brought in with him, that he brings into the story. The Madam, she was a lot of fun to write, and kind of a little nemesis guy down there in Gallatin Street, that he kind of faces off with, Julian faces off with a couple of times. He was fun to write. That just seedier side of New Orleans it was a lot of fun to go kind of down into the real underbelly of the city. And so to bring the magic into that underbelly that really was there. I mean, Gallatin Street was a real place. It's not there anymore. It's actually kind of in that area where Frenchman Street and the French Market is. But it was a real place, and it was a real place at the time of the setting of the story. And so to bring the magic that was so much a part of the city kind of down into those depths was a lot of fun to do, and to combine those two. We've seen how magic can be redeeming and powerful, and now it's kind of fun to see it used maybe in a way that it should not have been, but then kind of watch it come full circle again. So it was a whole lot of fun to go playing amid the bars and the brothels and the really, really this dark, gritty side of town.
This is Jule here. Yeah, reading it and getting just that sense of the world at the very beginning, I was so jealous. I thought, oh gosh, he's got this fabulous place to tell the story. And then the basement and the convent, it was all fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, and I like the fact that the magic is happening under the convent. Like there's something with that, you know, because they've all been so interconnected, and a lot of the time didn't realize how interconnected they all were. And to have the voodoo and the magic and, you know, just this dark kind of dank place that's under this brand new convent that's sitting above it, in the juxtaposition of the two places and their purposes, was a lot of fun to have that kind of descent. And I love that was chapters 1 and 2, but in chapter 3, we see the Mother Superior and watching her kind of walk down into that, and that descent of, you know, kind of walking out of the light of the convent and down into the darkness. It was a lot of fun to write, but it was also very symbolic of where we're going with the story.
Yeah, the Mother Superior is a much more essential character to the whole plot of this.
Oh yeah, it's very much her story. I mean, it's a whole lot of her story and who she is and why she was involved in the first place.
Yeah, that was really good backstory, good detail, and it fits really well with the story from the first book, which is, I mean, we talked about this, you know, in another venue, but you can get really trapped when you write a book and then you have to write the sequel, and you want to write something into the second book, but you can't because of something that happened in the first book, and you can't go back and fix it.
Right. I left a lot open-ended in the first book. A lot of it was kind of just, when it was written as a standalone, let's let the readers kind of fill in the backstory. Let's let them imagine, you know, kind of how these characters got involved in this in the first place. They had their ties that were kind of loosely tying them together, but then it was a lot of fill in the blank. You know, who is this person? Where did they come from? If this is their story, you know, where else could it go? And it was kind of left to the readers to imagine. And now this one starts to fill in those blanks, not entirely, not completely, because there is another book coming. There will be a third. So there's enough of that answering of the original questions to kind of pull you a little deeper into their lives a little bit more, and into the lives of people that you didn't realize were such an integral part of Zaley's story and her history and her family history, that now you realize have been with her long before, you know, she even was born. They're a part of her story. And so, you know, she almost, you know, she was such the central figure in the first book. And now she's still standing in the middle, but we're really sort of watching the carousel around her and all of these other people, and starting to see kind of how they all kind of come together around her. She's sort of she's the object that they orbit. And she's pulling all of these different people in because of her purpose. But I also love that even though she's our main character, she's not necessarily always the hero of the story. That she allows these other people to step in and kind of find their own gifts and their own heroism, and where they can save the day, she allows that. She's not going to hog that from them. She will step back.
Well, she needs their help. She needs their participation. Yeah, absolutely.
And she gets that. And I love that she's very strong. She's very secure in kind of what she's learning about herself. She second guessed herself a lot in the first one because all this was new to her. But now she's kind of settling into what she is and what her abilities are. She's still not got complete control over them. We see that she's still learning that control, but she's at least strong enough in understanding who she is and that there's more to her. But she knows that she can't do any of this without the help of the people around her. And I think for her, that's allowing them to teach her, knowing that she doesn't have all of the answers and all of the ability. To me, that's growth, that's strength, to know that you need other people in order to actually succeed in whatever your mission is, and allowing those other people to help and to shine when they need to.
Well,
And
she's obviously grown
oh yeah,
since the first book, and she's a
dying will do that to you.
Yeah. Not sure it's worth it, but yeah, okay.
Dying will do that to you.
But she has a good deal more confidence, and especially when she meets the new character that gets introduced, she's in control of that entire situation.
Oh yeah.
So
very much so, and I think one of the things that she's lost in dying is a lot of her innocence, and again, dying will do that to you. Like, you know, there's that young person's invincibility that they feel like they have, and she knows she's not invincible now, and she knows that as strong as she is and as powerful as she is, and what she's got inside of her that maybe other people don't, it can still die. And it has. And so she's lost that innocence of just, you know, I can take on the world and I can do these things. And now it's this jaded caution that makes her kind of take control of that situation. She's not going to put herself or her friends at risk unnecessarily. And so while she's kind of drawn to this young man and curious about this young man and what's going on with him, she's also keeping him at a very cautious distance for all of those reasons that she's learned in book one.
I like the way that you create kind of a fluid nature between the world and the afterlife, and there's barriers there, but they're not, you know, they're not walls. There's a transition between it, and you know, it's fitting that it happens in New Orleans because I've got a book coming out soon that has New Orleans set. There's actually an alternate universe version of New Orleans in my book where the ghosts and the living live side by side and they work together. And
I feel like that's New Orleans just as a whole.
Yeah,
and,
I do too.
It's truthfully probably one of the best descriptions of that city. Is that juxtaposition between the living and the dead and the good and the evil, and just how it all, you know, we talk about gumbo being, you know, basically a mixture of all kinds of things that have just simmered there together, and you know, having done that, all of those unique ingredients simmered for so long, it's become its own thing. And that's New Orleans. I mean, it truly is a gumbo because all of those people, all of those traditions, the living, the dead, the good, the bad, it all is accepted as New Orleans. And that's just what the place is. And it makes it a brilliant backdrop for a lot of stories, whether they're paranormal or not. It's just a fascinating place. And I like using the city as much as a character as anything else. It's the setting, but to me, it lives and breathes. And so in the book, it kind of does too. It's very personified in the setting and the descriptions of the setting. And that's because there's nothing about that city that's not alive to me.
And you just visited there recently, didn't you?
I did, about a week and a half ago.
About that, yeah. Tell us a little bit about your trip.
It was great and weird all at the same time. Of course, the city's been hit pretty hard by coronavirus. COVID hit New Orleans with a vengeance. It was one of the hot spots for a while. Lots of businesses did not survive that. There's a lot of places in New Orleans that are boarded up. And that was sad to see. The city will come back. It will always come back. I mean, it's down, it's not out. But then the other thing that was sort of looming when I went down there was Hurricane Delta. And so I go down on Wednesday. Delta is scheduled to make landfall on Friday. And so, you know, I told Mike Everhart, who I adore, I said, well, I'm about to do the most Nola Nash thing that has ever been done. I am going to New Orleans to stay in a haunted hotel with a hurricane coming. I am either an idiot or a badass. And Mike texted back and said, badass.
Heck yeah.
We're going to go with that. Thank you, Mike. I'm going to go with that. So I did go down there, and I think largely because of the hurricane, the first few days that I was there, the city was, you know, there were no tourists around hardly. things were shut that would not have been shut even with coronavirus having closed a lot of things down. And so it was wild walking down some of these streets with literally no one else on them, which is so strange. If you've ever been in New Orleans, that is an almost surreal experience in itself, was to be so alone in the city, like in the quarter, no one. It was so strange. A friend of mine and I were down there and went to go get dinner the first night I was there. And of course, it's a Wednesday night. It's about 9:30. And she's like, oh, you haven't eaten? And I said, no, I haven't, because I flew in at like 7. And she said, well, let's go get you some food. I was like, okay. So we go walking around. It's 9:30 in the French Quarter. We couldn't find anywhere that was open with food. What are we going to do? It's like, well, I guess we can get back to that po' boy shop back there, but it didn't look great. But we finally found a place that was open on Bourbon Street. We ended up sitting on a balcony, had a lovely meal, but it was basically a bar on Bourbon that just to be open had to serve food. And that's kind of the mayor's thing right now. The bars can be open if they're serving food. One of the weirdest things was to walk by Pat O'Brien's and see it boarded up. It was closed because they're not equipped to sell food. And so they're not open right now. Super weird to walk past Pato's and it's closed. But, this particular place had a kitchen, and so they were making food. And so we ordered food and had a hurricane on the balcony on Bourbon Street with just a handful of people down below that we were walking by and listening to their conversations float up. But 9:30 on a Wednesday night on Bourbon Street, where we finally found food. So it was a strange experience, I got to tell you. But it was also a really cool experience for me to see that city as if it was only for me. Like it was my city while I was down there, because I was so alone. The day that Delta made landfall, Friday, it pushed to the west, it hit Lake Charles again, which was so sad. And I do have family in Lake Charles, and that it was hard to know that they were about to get hit again. But I was sitting in front of St. Louis Cathedral, Jackson Square, me and a little thing of watermelon that I got from Rouse's Market that was, up in the quarter, just trying to find something to nibble on for lunch. And I'm just sitting there in like 30-mile-an-hour winds by myself in front of St. Louis Cathedral as the hurricane's making landfall and we're getting all the wind on the backside of it. I was just like, this is so strange, but I kind of like it. So it was great for taking pictures, which was really one of the reasons I went down there, was to take some pictures, because we do use my photography for various things that we do for marketing and book covers and things like that. So I was down there to do some of that. But it was great because there weren't a lot of people in my pictures. They would have to be cropped out. But at the same time, it was eerie. It was very eerie to be down there with it so deserted. But things did pick up on Saturday and Sunday. So the weekend after the hurricane was no longer a danger. Flooding was not a problem. Then the weekender tourists started to come back in Saturday and Sunday, and life picked up again. So it was good to see that, because if I had left on Friday, I would have been really, really sad for the city of New Orleans. It was a sad, odd time. But to see the life kind of coming back on the weekend made me feel a little bit better. But it was a great trip. I got to stay in a haunted hotel.
I watched
that. Was really
that. The light moving.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Very cool.
Yeah, the little girl.
Oh, yeah.
The little girl ghost. Yeah.
Yep. So Sarah and Philip, whatever, we got Phil, but we're assuming that was short for Phil or Philip. And we were on St. Philip, so we were at the corner of St. Philip and Bourbon, which is it's the Jean Lafitte Hotel and Guest House. And it is directly across the street from Jean Lafitte's blacksmith shop. And this house, it was a mansion on Bourbon, and it was so cool. I was the only one staying in the mansion part. There's a newer part of it that was kind of built on the back side of it, and there were a couple of people staying there, and the couple who owns it and runs it, they live in that part of it. I was the only one in the mansion. Of course, a hurricane's coming, so like even if they had people that were had reservations, they'd likely canceled them. But the lady hands me the keys when I checked into the room that I had chosen, and she said, "Did you choose 21?" And I said, "Yes." Why? Why do you ask? I knew why she was asking, but I was kind of curious to see what she would tell me, not knowing what I knew about that room, about the hotel. And she said, "Oh, no reason. It's just that people who are in 21, especially when we don't really have other reservations, have usually asked for it. I said, I did. And she's like, okay. So it was this weird conversation. Like, she didn't want to tell me what she knew about that room, just in case I didn't know about that room, and I wasn't going to tell her that I knew about that room. So it was a standoff of information. So it was kind of a funny exchange. So I knew what I was getting into when I chose that room, and I chose the hotel. And it was a very, very cool night. My friend who joined me down there, Willa Lemachant, she is a psychic medium in New Orleans, and she has great stories to tell of her childhood and things that she saw, and just kind of how she began to understand what she was, and, you know, all of her gifts and talents. But she also does paranormal investigations, and so she brought her equipment with her to the room. And so she met me there not long after I arrived at the hotel. And it was just a lot of fun to talk to the ghosts, and I mean, knowing they were there, and then to actually have the chandelier move. And it moved a lot. I mean, the little video clip that you saw, Christine, was just a snippet of what that chandelier had done all night long. And even in the morning, I woke up that morning, I look up, and there's the chandelier again. I'm like, good morning. Y'all have a good night. Because they're clearly there. And it was wild. I was just laying there in the bed watching the chandelier over my head, just swaying. It was a huge antique crystal chandelier, and it's just rocking. It was really very, very interesting. And no one else was staying in the mansion. I was the only one staying in that part of the house. We went to dinner, and when we came back from our, you know, hike around the quarter to find food on Bourbon Street, we went back to get Willow's equipment and things out of the room. And after we had talked to the ghost, the chandelier was moving, and like all of this other stuff was going on. As we walked out, I left the light on. And I didn't say anything to Willow, but for me, it was just kind of like, I'm not walking back into a dark room with that. You know, it's just not. Never felt like there was any animosity or anything. I never felt, you know, in danger in any way. It just felt like, you know, spirits needing company, wanted to talk or whatever. I left the light on. And so I locked the door. I mean, it was old key lock, you know, I mean, it wasn't even like a key card kind of thing. Just locked the door. And I walked out, and Willow had noticed but didn't say anything. We go back in, and I unlocked the door, and they'd given me the keypad, because they were going to bed, the couple that owned it. It was late, you know. And so I had to let us in through the keypad to the front door, and we go up the stairs, and I unlock my door, and the light switch was off. Like,
nope.
Okay, don't waste the electricity. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So the light was off. And then later, after I kind of got ready for bed, and I was like, oh yeah, one of my students wanted me to take video with a flash on my phone to see what I could pick up. And so I had plugged in my phone, and I set the alarm and, you know, everything for getting up the next morning. I had gone and brushed my teeth, because every time it's the same routine. I set my alarm, I put it back on my home screen, make sure I didn't, you know, forget to answer text messages or whatever. I wasn't going to get any text messages because I'm an idiot, and I left my phone on airplane mode, so nobody was texting me anyway. But I don't know, it's like, there was a mistake. But I put it over there, and I was like, done for the night. And then, you know, I went and got ready for bed and all that. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot to take the video. And I'd gone across the room and turned the light switch off. And I was like, I got to do the video thing. So I turned the light switch on, and I go all the way back around to the bed. I pick up my phone, and the camera was on. And I was like, okay, yeah, we're going to take some video now. That's what we're going to do. Thank you, Sarah.
They were getting ready for you.
Sarah was listening. Sarah was hanging out with me the whole time, the little girl. The house at one point had been used as an orphanage for children whose parents died of yellow fever. And of course, then the children, I mean, it wiped out that city so bad. And so the children died too. And when we asked Sarah how she died, she said sick. So she was one of the kids that died of yellow fever. And, you know, anywhere that I was, the meters would light way up, like all the way to red. Like, she decided she liked me. I brought her toys. I knew that there were children in the house. And so I brought a little porcelain doll and a ball. And so I guess she liked the fact that I brought her toys. It was like, oh, she's come to play with me. And so she hung out with me. Like, the skin was all like goose pimply, and like hair standing up on end, and like tingly, is like standing too close to like an electric wire. It was like just like buzzing almost. It was such a weird feeling. But it was Sarah. It was just like she's hanging out with me, and she sat in the middle of the bed most of the evening because we set the meter in the middle of the bed, and it would just go off. And we're like, Sarah's on the bed. And so, she stayed there all night long. Willa left the meter with me to kind of see if I could tell where she was hanging out with me. And right there in the middle of the bed, there's nothing electrical, nothing that would ever have picked that up, and that the meter would have picked up. And she sat there in the bed with me. And so I told her a bedtime story, and then it was just like, well, we're going to do this. We're just going to hang out. And so then there was Phil. Phil died from a fall, and he said, we don't know much about Phil, but we know he was there, and he died in a fall at some point. And then the next morning when I was getting dressed and taking a shower and everything, I was like, all right, guys, I'm going to take a shower, Phil. You stay out here. It's like just talking to them. Like, you can't come. I decided, if they're here and clearly physically able to do things, we're just going to hang out. Like, they just need some company. And so it was kind of that weird little invisible companions, that whole little bit of that time at Lafitte. So it was a lot of fun to be able to talk to them and to kind of see all of those interesting things happen. Is exactly what I had hoped was going to happen for that trip. But I kept saying, I'm the one that wants all of that to happen, so it's probably not, because that's the way it seems to work. But it was exciting to actually have all of that stuff happen, and it was great fun to have Willow there to see it all too. So I was like, I'm not crazy, and I've got it on video, so I know I'm not crazy. But it was a lot of fun and very interesting stuff. And Lafitte and the Lafitte brothers and that property actually will feature slightly in Crescent City Soul, which is the third one. So there was a reason actually that I stayed at Lafitte. That was intentional. Part of it had to do with the haunted hotel. Part of it has to do with the Lafitte brothers.
So as a warning for anybody who's going to stay in room 21 of that hotel, the ghost of the little girl is now tech savvy.
Yes, she is.
Yeah. Yep.
She is tech savvy. She will turn your phone on. And I do have video too of when I did turn the phone on. It was like Sarah said, I'm going to play with the phone. Okay. She's this little tiny voice that came through the speaker. So we know she was a little bitty girl. It was so cute, this little voice. And when I did the video with the flash on, there are like orbs, like little white dots just zigging all around the screen on that video. And it was just crazy. I didn't post that one. So that one you guys haven't seen. But it was wild, like all these little like, doom, 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 doom. And I'm like, Sarah's showing off. Like, she wanted her 15 minutes of fame. It was just like, okay, we're going to play with the phone. Like, so yeah.
You should find a way to work her into the third book.
She may have to work her way into the third book. If she doesn't work her way into this one, because she would have died in the mid-1850s, in the 1850 epidemic. The Sylvie's Pen series takes place in 1850s New Orleans. And so more likely that she would work her way into the third book of that series, because that one is 1850, 51, 51, 52. And so 53 would be the third book. So she's more likely to land in that one.
Yeah, but you could have her mother in the book, in book 3.
Could. Absolutely could.
You should do some research, see if you could find out her mother's name.
I don't know. It's hard to get research for that era because of so many deaths so quickly. And, there were so many families that were so impacted by that. It'd be interesting to see if I could find kind of a manifest of the children that were taken in to that orphanage. But those records are so hard to find, so hard to find. Knowing what the building was is about as much as the general research allows. I mean, beyond that, you have to really be into city records. And I'm wondering how much into those city records I could actually delve. That would take another trip down there, maybe, to just sit in the archives and just start going through papers.
At least you know where you'd stay. Maybe Sarah could give you a clue to her mother's name.
She might could help. I mean, if we wanted to put her mother in there, then I bet Sarah could help. That'd be me and Nola going back down to 21.
Take the Ouija board with you. And
well, why? She could probably text me. I mean, why do we need a Ouija board?
Oh yeah, she's tech savvy now.
She can use an iPhone.
Right.
Just text me, Sarah. Just Tell me what you need to know.
That's
It was
funny.
so funny. I mean, it was a great trip though, and we did. Willow and I got to hang out for a couple of days. We went up to Destrehan Plantation, which is part of the Sylvia series that I actually needed to do some research at Destrehan Plantation, which is one of the largest sugarcane plantations in Louisiana. At one point, producing most of the sugarcane that was being exported. I mean, it's huge. It was 8 miles deep. It went from the Mississippi River all the way back to Lake Pontchartrain, which was 8 miles straight back. So, and a mile wide. So huge sugarcane plantation. And the house is just stunning. And it was a very, very interesting tour. We actually toured it twice. We did the Destrehan home tour, but then also went back for the Unheard Voices tour, which was led by a Destrehan descendant whose great-great-grandmother was one of the original Destrehan plantation owner's slaves, but the plantation owner and the great-grandmother had a baby, and so she's the descendant of that child. So she is actually descended of both the planter and the slave. So she leads the tour, which is fascinating because she has so much family history tied up in that plantation just generationally, and what she knows of her family is incredible because they were so tied to that plantation. So those records are a lot easier to come by than some of the other people and their family history might have been. So it's really cool to hear her telling that story because she can kind of tell both sides of it, but her main lineage is from the enslaved people, and so she gives really more of their background. So it was interesting to take the first tour to hear about the planter and all the people who lived there in the big home, and then to hear the second story of the people who actually worked that land and
That's
kind of
so
their story.
fascinating. That's so great. I can't wait for this COVID to be over so I can go back down there and take those tours.
Destrehan is a fantastic tour on both sides of those things. So if you get to do the Unheard Voices tour, Diane is incredible. She's really, really phenomenal. And she does some really interesting things because her grandmother, like so many people there, was devout Catholic, but also, very much into voodoo. And so, she would help people with all kinds of things and spells and things. And so Diane learned from her grandmother. And, she said some people learn to cook from their grandmother. I learned how to do this from mine. And, so she even does a demonstration on how to make a gree-gree bag and, some of the voodoo traditions that were part of plantation life at that time as well. And just kind of the New Orleans culture and everything from the German coast, which is what the river plantations, that area is referred to as the German coast. And then because originally it was settled by largely German families, which then got taken over by all of the planters and kind of buying up the land from them. But the German coast has so many plantations. I mean, literally we drove 1.5 miles and we had lunch at a different plantation. I mean, that's just, they're one right after the other down the river. And it's fascinating. So many amazing plantations. Another one, Jule, when you get to go down there, one that you would really, truly enjoy is Laura Plantation. And Laura Plantation was owned by Creole Black women.
Wow.
And so Laura has got a tremendous history. And the fact that it was owned by women is a truly interesting history with that one as well. So I highly recommend going down there and taking the tours, and they're just very diverse. You think about Gone with the Wind and it's all the same, but in Louisiana it's so not. The laws were very different then, and very different about who could own property, who could own people. I mean, you had free blacks that had either bought their freedom or just were free, actually owned slaves themselves. And so there's a very interesting culture with that as well. In fact, the man who built Destrehan, he was the primary architect and the builder of Destrehan Plantation, earned his freedom during the course of that and was able to buy his own freedom. And later on, he owned his own slaves, but also had, they think, a part to play in the German coast slave uprising, where he actually hid some slaves. So a very interesting mix of what was actually happening with the culture there, and it had a whole lot to do with it.
You have a lot more books to write then.
I do. I have a lot more books to write. That is absolutely true. And the more I go down there, the more I come up with things that I want to write about. And I mean, it's probably good that I don't live there, because I would just be so inundated all the time.
Yeah, you'd be too distracted.
I would be so distracted. At least this keeps it in very piecemeal, okay, I'm going to go research this. I'm going to go look at this now. Because otherwise I'd be, my head on the swivel, and I wouldn't be able to stop long enough to actually get anything written.
There's a line in your book that kind of sums up New Orleans too. The bridge between magic and the rest of the culture in New Orleans. I think Zoli is talking to the other character and says something about magic being a lot like food preparation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It really is. I mean, everything is sort of the recipe. It's how you put the ingredients together. And then what do you do with it when you're done? Are you fixing it for yourself, or are you fixing it for others? I mean, it all comes back down to the recipe. And so much of what they used for both came from what was readily available to them, and then what was traditionally used by whatever culture that came from, whether it was the magic or the food. And there's so much an influx of culture that they've brought ingredients for both of those things, whether it's magic or food, is from different places, and assembled it all into something that is uniquely New Orleans. It's nothing like anywhere else, the food or the magic. It's very unique. It's its own place. I mean, if we were, like Europe, where our states were different countries, I think, Louisiana would have to chop off New Orleans and say, nope, you're your own thing, because it's so different even from other parts of the state. I
think almost every state has that that one place, that go-to place that's a little different than anywhere else in the state.
Oh yeah.
Some states, bigger states might have multiples. I mean, in Texas, for example, Austin is completely different than the rest of the state. And then in California, you have Los Angeles and you have San Francisco, and they're different than the rest of the state, but they're different from one another too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and New Orleans is such a fascinating place too, because it's got such a diverse range of accents. And I mean, you know somebody from New Orleans just from the way that they talk, but at the same time, you also know the people who come from the bayou areas. They have a very different way of talking. And people think that the New Orleans accent is actually the Cajun accent, when that's not true. And the Cajun accent, that's more like the country side of Louisiana.
That's out in the swamps.
Yeah, that's out in the swamps. And so that accent is very different. So that Cajun accent doesn't have anything to do with the city of New Orleans. The city of New Orleans actually has, by and large, more of a Brooklyn, New York accent than anything else. We call it the Brooklyn of the South, because that's really more the accent. And it comes from having so many different people, being a port city, having so many people come in, and kind of the accents kind of bled into its own thing. There was a lot of Irish that came in. There were a lot of Italians that came in, along with, historically the French and the Spanish. And so you end up with this accent that is very metropolitan, and it's kind of in its way, kind of like New York has so many different cultures that have kind of developed this New York accent. It's very similar, because it's a lot of the same similar groups of people, and they just were Southern as opposed to New York in the North.
Well, the people who go to New Orleans and end up staying are assimilated into the culture.
Oh yeah, you have to be. I mean, they'll kick you out. Like, you have to be part of the culture. It's kind of
like the Borg in Star Trek.
Yes, I assimilate you. You definitely come into a culture that is very clearly defined. And it's very hard to resist being part of that culture because so much of it is truly expected of you to be part of that culture. And it's part of the daily life, the holidays, the parades, all of those things. I went to LSU, and for a while, I didn't graduate from LSU. I graduated somewhere else, but I was at LSU for a little while, too big a school for me. And we didn't have school, and actually in high school, it's the same thing. Your schools, you don't have school during Mardi Gras, like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So you don't have school for, Mardi Gras is the Tuesday. You don't have school the Monday before, because of course there's lots of parades and everything on the Monday. And there's no school on Wednesday because everyone's partied on Tuesday. Doesn't matter how old you are. No one wants to bring you to school on Wednesday. So you stay home on Wednesday. So, that it's like this little mini spring break that you have. And everybody takes that day off. I mean, unless you're in some sort of tourism, hospitality, food, drink, those people are working. But businesses will shut down for those days. And it's just part of daily life. It's like, oh yeah, well, I can plan to go on vacation, and everyone does. The locals leave during Mardi Gras, like unless they're part of that business, stay out of there. You want to go down to Disney World and find all the people from New Orleans, you go Mardi Gras week because that's where they are.
Yeah, things get a little crazy there.
Well, they have the parades that go on for so long. I mean, it's 2 weeks worth of parades. And the more family friendly ones and the ones that everybody goes to are earlier. And so it's really the more raucous parades that are happening the Monday and Tuesday. And the locals just want out of there. I mean, it's millions of people are descending on that city, and nobody wants to be around for that.
And my oldest daughter wanted to check out Tulane because she was thinking of going there. And this was right after Katrina. And I'd been to New Orleans a couple of times before that and saw what it's really like there. Mm-hmm. And what you were talking about, the town being deserted. I'm walking down St. Charles at night and nobody's there.
Nope.
And, the trolley's not running, the buses aren't running. It's, at dark after Katrina, the city was pretty much shut down. Mm-hmm. And I got kind of lost and turned around. I was going to my friend's house. He lived above a garage. And I got lost and I got sidetracked, and I knew I was in a section of town that I wouldn't be walking through at night otherwise. Mm-hmm. Okay. But nobody was there. It was bizarre. It
is a very bizarre feeling when you know this isn't right. This isn't the way that the city should be. I had a walking down St. Charles Street alone moment on my trip, actually. I went from my hotel, I took the streetcar up to Superior Grill, up St. Charles, because I stayed at Jean Lafitte's for the first night that I was there. But then I love this little boutique hotel, the Britannia Park Hotel. I love it. Very quirky little boutique hotel, and it's in Uptown. So it's right, half a block off of St. Charles. And so I love it because I just get the streetcar pass, and I can take the streetcar wherever I want to go. And so I hopped the streetcar and I went up to Superior Grill to go have some dinner. And I have my lovely dinner all by myself. And then I'm going to take the streetcar back home, back to the hotel. Easy peasy, done it 100 times. It's no big deal. Standing out there, it's dark. It's like 9-something at night. And I'm just standing here by myself at the streetcar stop. And I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And then the other streetcar coming the other direction slows down. And the driver leans out and he says, "Ma'am, I just want to let you know, honey, that streetcar that's supposed to be picking you up, it was in an accident up the line. It's not coming." I said, "Well, thank you for letting me know. Is it safe for me to walk back down to Terpsichore?" And he said, "Yeah, just stay on the tracks." He said, "It's not like you're going to get hit by a streetcar." Okay. Like, all right, I'll do it. Well, the way St. Charles, and you know this, Elgon, having been down there, St. Charles, these massive homes that they don't look
beautiful,
and they're stunning, and they go way back. They're deep houses, but there's so many live oak trees and just these fabulous lush.
And the sidewalks moved up by the roots, so you got to watch. You got to watch where you step.
You do. And it's dark right there on that sidewalk. I mean, there's street lights and little things, but when you get deep into the Garden District, it is dark. But the streetcar line, right there down the middle of the street,
right in the middle,
like this, and the median, basically, they call it the neutral ground. The median is where the streetcar runs both directions. And it's really well lit. And so that was another reason why he was telling me to walk on the streetcar tracks, was because it was well lit. And so if I was going to be by myself, a woman at night in New Orleans walking down, then he wanted me where it was going to be well lit. And so, it was good advice. And hey, nice that the dude stopped. I mean, he could have just kept going. I mean, he stopped the streetcar specifically to tell me that, which is indicative of the city. I mean, there's so much hospitality and kindness. And I mean, even the streetcar driver is not going to leave a woman standing there by herself for God knows how long, even though I'm half a block from a busy restaurant and the front of a hotel. I mean, it's still, he didn't want to leave me standing there. It was, she's going to need to get home. So she needs to find another way to get home. So I walked 2 miles back to my hotel on the streetcar track. Guess what passed as I got to my hotel? The streetcar. Whatever accident it had been in, and it cleared up. Now, again, I mean, it took me a long time. I mean, walking 2 miles back, but I would have been standing there a very long time had I not started hoofing it back to the hotel. But yeah.
But if you'd waited, you would have arrived at almost the same time.
Almost the same time. But I would have been standing there by myself in the dark, which was probably not a good plan. So that would have made me a little bit more of a target than at least a moving target. But I did get to tell a couple other people on the way back that we're standing there doing the same thing. It's going to be a while, y'all. It's been in an accident. And, obviously nothing really severe, didn't necessarily derail. But those people that were crossing those streets don't always get out of the way of the streetcar, and they see the streetcar coming and they stop. And the median's like, what are you doing? Why did you do that? So they probably just nudged another car with, a vehicle, an actual car crossing. But I mean, they have to deal with it. So I guess that's why it took so long, but it was really kind of funny. The streetcar ain't coming for you. So yeah, there's quirky, weird things that happen to you when you're in the city, and I love having those stories. I love having the experience of going into that city and knowing I have no idea what's going to happen anytime that I go, and I go with the expectation that if I were to plan something, it's going to go horribly awry. So I kind of plan as I'm there. I have a general idea of what I want to do, but then I kind of let the city do what it's going to do. And I end up having a better time that way. I think if you fight New Orleans and what's going to happen weather-wise or with your plans or anything else, then it's still going to have its way with you one way or the other. You just need to let go and let New Orleans do its thing.
Yeah, spontaneous is better anyway.
Absolutely. It's a lot of fun down there. And I mean, a couple of trips back, I was having a hurricane with a voodoo priestess in the courtyard of a bar in the French Quarter. So you just don't know what your trip is going to have. And if you let New Orleans do its thing, you're going to have some pretty great adventures.
So the book's called Crescent City Sin. And there's the cover again.
And I took that picture at St. Louis Cemetery. You see, there we go. And then Don Kramer worked his magic with it, which is really cool to see what came out of that picture. So both of the Crescent City book covers are pictures that I've taken at Lafayette Cemetery. The cemeteries are closed right now for COVID, and Lafayette is having some restoration done on the tombs there. So I did not get to take cemetery pictures there, but I did get to go to another cemetery, which is very cool. I love the cemeteries, but the ones in the heart of the city were closed for COVID reasons and things. But it's a pretty fascinating, photogenic city, and I'm so happy that Pandamoon is letting me use my own photography on the cover, because it's just special to me, and it just means a lot that they let me put my own little touch on that.
So the print book is available right now on Amazon. You can order it and receive it. They're shipping it already.
They are.
And the Kindle goes live on Wednesday at midnight West Coast time, I think is when it actually goes live.
Woohoo.
Woohoo.
Well, and
Congratulations, Nola. Congratulations.
This
Thank
is so
you
amazing.
so
I'm
much.
so excited for you. You deserve anything that comes your way. This is a great book. It's a great book. You can tell that you put your heart and soul into it, and your readers are going to love it. They're just going to love it.
I hope that they do. And, I love reading reviews. I know that, some authors don't because they just feel like, I don't want to read the bad ones. I love reading the reviews, and I love hearing from people who've read it, who reach out and let me know what they think. So, I hope that people will actually, reach out and tell me what they think about this one, about the first one, about new projects that are coming out. I've got, 2 new series that are going to be launching soon as well. So lots of things coming down the pipe, and, it is very much a part of my heart and soul goes into these books, because that's, New Orleans is where my heart and soul lives, truly. My body is in Tennessee, but my heart and soul live in New Orleans. And they're very special to me. And so I hope that everyone feels the same way as you guys do about it.
You've got the Second Line show.
Yes.
Nola's Second Line show. It's on Wednesdays at 8 Eastern.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's right, 8 Eastern.
Yeah, 8 Eastern, 7
It's
Central.
on 5 o'clock my time, so.
Right.
And this Wednesday, we're going to have a lunch party there, and Christine and I are going to be there. I believe Laura Kemp's going to be there.
Laura's coming. Nicole Aslan is coming.
Nicole's coming.
Mike Eberhardt is going to join us.
So it's going to be a big Pandamoon party.
It is going to be a big Pandamoon party. We're going to tell some ghost stories. Are y'all dressing up? I'm dressing up.
I've got an interesting costume that involves this thing.
Hey.
So we'll see.
All right.
We'll see what happens.
All right. Well, we're dressing up. We're making it a Halloween ghost story launch party, spectacular Second Line show. And the Second Line show is already booking well into 2021. So what started as a wild hair has no end in sight. So it's been a lot of fun. What a crazy, crazy ride!
They're always interesting discussions, and they're a lot of fun. And people know that authors tend to be kind of reserved and shy as a general rule, which you have no problem in that regard. But you seem to bring out a lot of the fun and excitement out of the people that you interview, which makes the show a pleasure to watch.
It's a lot of fun, and I think because it's giving them, my whole goal with the show is to give them an opportunity to show their personalities and who they are to their readers. There are a lot of great opportunities for them to interview about a book, about how they came up with the idea, what went into writing the book. But a lot of people are going to follow them from interview to interview to interview, and they're going to start to see the same types of things, same answers to the same questions. And for me, I wanted to give them an opportunity to show who they are, their personalities. We'll talk writing, we'll talk about that kind of thing. We are authors, and that's what we do. But at the same time, it's throwing in something fun where it's going to loosen them up a little bit and let the readers get to know them as people, not just the names on a cover of a book. And that was important to me, to do something unlike anything that was out there in Facebook world. And it was a lot of fun. And it was largely in thanks to Annie McDonald, who she and I were just literally text messaging kind of random thoughts one morning. And she's like, you know what, we should do this. Like, we could do this. She goes, you could totally host this. I'm like, okay. So, like I said, I thought it might be, 1 or 2 shows, and then it would kind of fall apart. I didn't have any idea that I was going to have so many authors willing and wanting to be part of the show. I thought, I'll beg a few, and then, that'll be it. But literally booking well into 2021. Like, I just had somebody sign up for July. So now I've got authors all through the end of the year. I've had a couple of publicists at different publishing companies, or publicity companies, actually hooked me up with some of their people. And so now we're, getting in touch with them, and they're bringing their authors on board to do some fun stuff. And they kind of feel the same way. In this time of COVID, we don't get to do the live events. We don't know when we're going to get to do all of these things again. And so these are just fun opportunities for authors to get out there.
Yeah, well, it's a great platform, and it's growing in interest. And it's live on Facebook, on multiple Facebook pages, groups.
Yep.
And it's also on YouTube. It's Nola Nash Entertainment on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a live stream, but you can go to the YouTube channel after the fact and watch the whole thing.
Yep.
So.
And if you want to watch the show, comments, we pull from the comments all through that show. And, we talk to the audience as much as we talk to each other. So that's a lot of fun too, because, I always say that the show is better when it derails. I may come up with a plan, but I just let that sucker derail anytime that it's going to be fun and interesting to derail it. And so we do. And lots of times, the conversation can steer based on a comment from somebody, or, just anything that comes up. And so we have a lot of fun. I do give the authors a general map of where the show is going, but I always have that caveat. We may or may not stick to that.
And one last question, which I already knew the answer to, but I'm going to ask you so you can tell everybody.
Okay.
What does the second line mean?
The second line comes from the parade culture in New Orleans, and the first line of any parade are the people who actually started the parade. So whether it's a wedding or a funeral, it's the band at the front, then the people who belong to that parade are the first line of the parade. The people who just join in, because people do just join the parade, they're the second line. So it's all the people that just sort of decide, hey, they're having fun, I'm going with them. And so it's all the people who join the parade as it goes down its route. And so for me, it's sort of me and my author friends kind of getting all of this stuff going, and then it's picking up all of the fans and the other people in the book clubs and all these great people who have joined the second line, and other author friends that I've made along the way. So the second line, is the name of my Facebook group, Nola's Second Line, because it's all of the people who are joining me on this journey, which is definitely a party. We're having some fun. And so the second line fits that. And it fits the show as well, because it's all of these people who we are picking up along the way and carrying on our little party. Just whoever wants to come on. Be the part of the second line.
So find Nola on Facebook, find her on YouTube, and join in the fun.
Absolutely. The more the merrier. Come on.
Well, we've enjoyed talking to you today, Nola. We'll have to invite you back again, and
thank you.
You'll see us again on Wednesday on your show.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm ready to party.
It should be interesting.
You know it.
All right. Bye-bye.